Go. Hi folks, it's Sid here from Border Archery. Lovely day. I wanted to try and cover bow design in terms of geometry. Okay, what is a reflex deflex? What is a hybrid? What is a recurve? What makes a super recurve? Okay, so let's talk about the original ASL, the American semi-longbow, the hill style. Okay, in essence, it doesn't really matter what happens with the grip in terms of bow geometry for this video. But what you'll notice is that the limbs are slightly set forward, but the limb design is straight. Okay, and when one of these styles of bows are strung, what you'll notice is the limb takes a continuous curve. Okay, continuous as in it bulges out. Now, the idea of that continuous bulge can be demonstrated with a string. Okay, so what you do is you put the string along the limb. Sorry, till I get my hands in the right place. Right, and when you bend the limb, okay, the string is in constant contact with the limb. All right, so that would be classed as an ASL, a hill style bow. Okay, now what we've discovered since these bows came out was a little bit of deflex in the riser, putting the grip forward, meant that the limbs come out at a slightly back set angle. Okay, and the downside to that is it ends up with the tips back on the bow, which means you end up with less performance. So by starting to push the limbs forward again to get them back to the original position, you end up with the start of the reflex deflex longbow, flat bow for those in Britain. So here you can see the curve of the limb. It's not coming straight out, it's coming set back, and it starts to take a sweep forward. Okay, but this is classed as a reflex deflex bow. It's not a hybrid though, because of back to that basic test of the geometry of the bow. So I grab it with my thumb. Is that you've got reflex deflex. Okay, so you've got the deflex at the riser and then the reflex in the limb coming forward whilst the bow is unstrung. But as soon as you string the bow, the limb takes a constant curve, which means the string is in permanent contact with the limb. Okay, so if you proceed with this design, if you take this design one step further, angle the limbs a little bit further back, put a little bit more forward set in the limb, you end up moving into the next design. The next design would be classed as a hybrid. Hybrid is not quite a recurve. Okay, so again you can see it's coming back set more, then there's a bit more shape in the limb. And if we did the test of does the string contact the limb at bracing height, now this bow, as I say, is a hybrid, so once you get the bow back into its bracing height, you can see the gap there. Okay, now when this bow is strung, okay, the string does not contact the limb face. Okay, so that still makes it a longbow. Now if the string contacts the limb face, you've effectively got a recurve. Now some of these bows, they require the higher end of the bracing height to achieve that string lift, that string gap, that separation from the limb, where it only really touches the nocks and not the limb itself. Okay, now that's the start, that's the hybrid. It's starting to want to become a recurve. Okay, so if we carry on with this basic principle in that we put the limb pointing backwards a little bit more and a little bit more shape, well, they get difficult if you put the shape back here, so most of the shape starts to come out here and you end up going into the recurve that we all know. I mean, a recurve's a simple design in that we all understand it is simple to describe. It's got string grooves mostly because the string tracks down the limb. It's got a contact patch at bracing height. Okay. So here's one of our mid-80s designed recurves. Roughly the recommended bracing height, but anyway, this is an old early 90s design, okay, where, as I said, you've got string contact, right? That makes it a recurve. But as you can see, you've got a point in the design where it's not touching, but it's still reflexed. Okay, now the fact at the tip to there, you've got all of that reflex going on. Again, it depends on the era that you're talking about, but normally they're coming out a little bit more of an angle. Okay, it's one of the reasons why recurve ILF risers don't really make for good long bows, because the limb's poking out too far. And the reason for that is, as the limb gets more reflexed, the bow gets smoother to draw, and that means you can afford a shorter limb, which is why recurves have shorter limbs than longbows. Okay, but unidirectional fibres, and we've covered this in previous videos, unidirectional fibres means that you've got a limitation on recurve size. So if I take a string from that knock shoulder to that knock shoulder, you end up with a parallel string. If that string is more than 1 3/4 inches in front, you've effectively got an unstable design. Yeah, and that's where in 1999 we pioneered the 45-degree carbon to torsionally enhance the limb, and that allowed us to go for a super recurve. So a super recurve, again, sloping further back, adding more hook. Yeah, you can see the principles, you can see the ideas. The ideas are really just a generational change and typical. We've got a bow that's too short. I'll have to dig this one into my leg to try and show you that even when the bow's at bracing height, yeah, it still has a monster amount of recurve. Okay, and that's the bit that generates the next evolution in this: more back, more deflex, more reflex, and that's the kind of the evolutionary step that's happened with super recurves, and that's what defines a super recurve, is that it's torsionally, the recurve's too big to be torsionally stable to be able to shoot accurately. So when you start putting 45-degree carbon on it, that's one method of achieving it. It seems to be the best. It's the most, I was going to say copied, but we'll skip that word. It's the most utilized method of enhancing torsional stability that we've got, so therefore it allows for recurves to change their profiles. Okay, so those are the iterations of bow design, starting from the flat bow of the ASL into reflex deflex, still a continuous D, and as soon as it loses that continuous D at bracing height and starts to have still got the reflex in it, it becomes a hybrid, then a hybrid into a recurve, and then the next stage is the super recurve. Okay, that wasn't allowed. That wouldn't happen until we pioneered the 45-degree carbon back in 1999. All right, so anyway, there you go, different styles of bow design. Our Hawk is available as a reflex deflex, but it's predominantly a hybrid, and it's the only hybrid that we make. Our Harrier, Harrier Royale and Warthog, they are all reflex deflex, as in they've got a continuous D at bracing height. Then we don't quite do a conventional recurve. The CV 1.5 is the closest we get. It still is a fraction too big to be target happy, without the use of 45-degree carbon, so it's kind of the start of the Super Recurve. It's right on that cusp. It's like having a hybrid where the string almost touches. And then we get a bigger and bigger recurve from there, but we basically do Super Recurves from start to finish. All right, so there you go. If you've got any questions, ping them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer. Thanks for watching.